Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 On Racing Show. We got a lot to talk about. We had Speed Weeks, Daytona, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there. We also have Where Are They Now? Today we're going to talk about Benny Parsons, the 1973 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup champion. And we're also going to talk about the 2008 NASCAR Whelen Modified champion TC Ted Christopher. So it'll be an interesting night of race talk. Well, let's get right into Benny Parsons, our 1973 champion in the top series in NASCAR. Benjamin Stewart Parsons, born July 12th, 1941. And unfortunately, he passed on January 16th, 2007, from the ill effects of lung cancer. Benny Parsons, known as BP, the professor, he was well respected at the racetracks all over the country in every level, from the Cup Series all down, right down to the the NASCAR Whelen All-American Series, which was back then the Winston Racing Series, I guess. But he was born in Wilkes County, North Carolina, and after high school, his family moved to Detroit, Michigan, where his father started a taxi business, which Benny Parsons became a taxi driver. I guess that's how he learned how to zigzag in and out of the races and down the straightaways and into the turns. Was driving in the streets of Detroit had to be incredible. Benny Parsons, one of those good guys. Legend has it that after he left the taxi cab business, he was pumping gas, and a couple of people pulled in to get some fuel, not only for their pickup truck, but for their race car as well. So they convinced Benny that after he closed the gas station, let's go to the races, come with us. So he goes to the races with them, and he's excited by what he's seeing. Well, the people who towed the race car there, their driver did not show up. So I said, well, Ben, you ever drive a race car? So I drove a taxi cab. They threw him into it. Now, he didn't win the race, because that would be a perfect storybook ending, but he was hooked. And I tell people all the time, you either love it or you hate it, and when you get into it, it's something you never want to not do again. And you know, there are people 60, 70 years old, and they still want to get back into race cars, because race car drivers, they never retire. They're just waiting for another ride. So that began his racing in the weekly bull rings and short tracks of Michigan. And little known fact about Benny Parsons is he drove world's famous figure-eight stock cars. And he was a figure-eight champion at his home track up in Michigan. Well, it was 1964, and Benny Parsons made his NASCAR debut running one race for Holman Moody. Then he raced in ARCA, and he was the ARCA champ in 1968 and 69, and he had 3 top 10s in 4 NASCAR races in 69, getting his feet wet in the top series. In 1970, Benny Parsons went full-time in the Cup Series, 8th place in the points, driving for LG DeWitt Racing. In 1971, he had his first win at the South Boston Speedway in Virginia. In 1972, he was 5th in points after finishing 11th in points in 1971. In 1973, he had his first Cup victory and a championship. Benny Parsons had 21 top 10s that year, 15 top 5s, and 28 races. And after being involved in a 13-car crash at North Carolina's Rockingham Speedway, it dashed his hopes for that championship in 1973. He was ready to give up. Well, Richard Petty was going to take over the point lead, and the King was going to have another championship. So what happens? Every driver's crew that was in the pit area that day decided, let's help this underdog, and they put his car back together for him. Benny Parsons made it out and wins the championship over Richard Petty. Between 1974 and 1980, Benny Parsons finished no worse than 5th in the point standings. In 1979, he switched to a car number 27 after running the 72 car for all those years. He switched to the 27, driving for MC Anderson. 1980, he won the World 600 at Charlotte, which is no simple task. In 1981, he drove for Bud Moore's number 15 to 10th in the point standings. He was the first driver to break the 200-mile-an-hour mark at Talladega in 1982. And then between 83 and 86, Benny Parsons drove part-time. He appeared in the 1983 Burt Reynolds movie Stroke a Race, and he then in 87 joined Hendrick Motorsports as the replacement driver for Tim Richmond, who was suffering from a disease which ultimately killed him. In 1988 was Benny Parsons' final season driving for the legendary Junie Dunleavy. Following his last event as a race car driver, Benny Parsons moved into the television booth as an announcer on ESPN, a pit road announcer, where he was highly respected and did a good enough job that he eventually wound up in the TV booth calling the races. He was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, class of 2017. He was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1994. He was named one of NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers in 1998. And he was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America in 2005. In his Monster Energy Cup Series career, he had 21 seasons, 526 events, 21 wins, 1 championship, and earned over $4.4 million. He also ran in the Grand National E-Series. He ran 2 events in 2 years, no victories there. As I said earlier, Benny Parsons died of lung cancer. He's survived by his wife Terry and 2 sons, Kevin and Keith, and a brother, Phil Parsons, who was a former Cup driver himself and now a TV commentator. Benny Parsons, that's his picture there, NASCAR Hall of Fame. Nobody could have been prouder to be put into the Hall of Fame than Benny Parsons in 2017. One of those good guys. I had met him. I have sat down and talked racing with him, and I have some pictures in my scrapbook with him and I just sitting there. Fun-loving guy. When I told him I drove figure-8 cars and not very well, he laughed. He goes, doesn't everybody? It was a good thing. Good man, Benny Parsons. The next guy I considered a friend, TC, Ted Christopher. 2008 NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour champion, was born June 5th, 1958. He would have been 60 years old this year, and he died in a tragic accident in September 16th in 2017, and that's his championship picture there. On his way to race a NASCAR touring event at Long Island's Riverhead Raceway. Teddy Christopher is one of those guys, if it had wheels on it and a motor, he drove it and he raced it. He drove in ISMA, Camping World Truck Series, late models, pro stocks, midgets, modifieds, Xfinity cars, Cup cars, and even go-karts, where he got his start later in life than most of the kids that drive in the Cup Series today. He was one of the most aggressive drivers I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I've seen many. Charlie DeZombach, Richie Evans, Fred Harbach. Ted Christopher was one of those guys, and it's kind of funny. They'd put him to the back, and he'd drive right back to the front. They'd put him to the back again, he'd drive back up to the front. Teddy Christopher had a rule. He called it the 3-tap rule. The first tap, when he banged you in the bumper, I'm here, and he'd give you a little wave. The second tap was pick a lane, or I'm picking it for you. And the third tap was he'd bump you so hard, he'd put you up in the marbles, and he'd go either under you, or he'd send you down the infield and go around you. That was Teddy Christopher. In 2001, he was a NASCAR Whelen All-American Series national champion. In 2008, he was the NASCAR Whelen Modified champion. In 2006, he was named the NASCAR Whelen All-American Series all-time top 25 drivers. In 2008, the Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut named a section of grandstand in honor of TC for his 100th victory at the facility. In his Monster Energy Cups attempts, was in the Monster Energy Cup car for 5 years, but only 6 events, and that was usually at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Same thing with the Xfinity, 6 seasons there. However, there he had 21 races. In the Camping World Truck Series, 2 years, 2 races. K&N Pro Series, 17 years, 92 races with 10 victories. Whelen Modified Tour, 29 years, 372 races with 42 wins, and the 2008 championship. The Whelen Southern Modified Tour, 9 years, 19 races, 6 wins there. Ted Christopher also ran the 24 Hours at Daytona. He had 3 events there, 2 in 2006, 7, and 8. And he was one of those guys, like I said earlier, if it had wheels and a motor, he drove it. Ted Christopher was one of those people that you didn't want to see in your mirror as you're a driver. He ran you clean, but he ran you hard. And he was one of those guys, like I said, that he just showed up, he had that spring in his walk, smiling all the time, but there was something about him. When he got in the race car, strapped the belts on, put the helmet on, it was all business. And I'll tell you what, the first time I had to deal with Ted Christopher was 2003 at the Icebreaker at the Thompson Motorsports Park, and I had to talk to him about something. And he was one of those guys that he didn't get to the track early, he didn't get there to hang out, he showed up to race. So he didn't have to really be there until sometime during practice, because he wasn't one of those guys that went out all the time and dialed himself out. He'd go out, run a couple of practices, the car'd be good. And I have to talk to him now, and I heard all this bad stuff about TC, Ted Christopher, how he's such a tough guy. And I went up to him and I said, hey, Ted, I got to talk to you about something. And we're talking, and he had this like serious, his arms folded, real serious. And all of a sudden, he elbows me like that. He goes, "How?" And he goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, Ted, listen, this is serious. He goes, come on, Joe, we do this for fun. And he elbows me again. We had a good time with that. We really did. And I had tried to convince him to drive my figure-8 car at Riverhead Raceway, and it just didn't work out because he was flying back and forth, as everybody knows, and the figure-8s aren't always there, and I wasn't always there, and it never worked out. And to the end, right up to the end, we had talked about that. He goes, I wish I would have drove that figure-8 car. But Ted Christopher was one of those guys. He was sincere, he was passionate, and we're going to talk about passionate in the passion that we all have for racing later on in the show. But he was one of those good guys, and he's missed. And you know, they do a lot of memorials in his name, and trophies are named after him now. And I only wish that TC could see what he left behind. I really do. Anyway, that's it for our Where Are They Now segment. And what I do, for some of you who haven't figured it out by now, I've gone back and done the Cup champions from the first one, Red Byron, and every week we're going to, until we're done with them. Right now we're in 1973, so there's a few years left, and there's a lot of guys that had multiple championships like Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, who we really still haven't got into yet. And then we have Terry Labonte that we're going to talk about, Dale Jarrett. And the same thing with the modified. So here we are, 2008. And we have a couple of guys still left to talk about in those championships. And once we go through that, I'm going to do segments on where are they now, like car owners, crew chiefs, what are they doing? Weekly racing guys who are now in the show, the big time. Talk about stuff like that. So we have a lot to talk about, for the rest of the year. So we'll have some fun with this. And it's one of the things that we do that we just enjoy doing. That's why we do that. That's why on Monday nights you folks log in, and some of you go in the chat, some of you just sit and listen, because we talk racing and we have a good time with it. I tell guests that are going to come on, they want to know, like, what are we going to talk about? I said, it's like you came over to my house and we were sitting at the table having a beer. Just talk racing. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to take a break. We come back, we're going to talk about Daytona, the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, and some of the stuff that went on in Daytona when we come back.
Hey, I was going to say what's up for some reason. Hey, we're Set It Up, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE, your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. All right, Daytona Speedways. Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida. First event for the top series, for the Xfinity, and the 500, the Daytona 500, a couple of them, is like the Super Bowl. So anyway, Daytona, here we go with the results. The winner, Austin Dillon driving the number 3 car, and it's kind of interesting how Austin Dillon, driving for his grandfather, Richard Childress, in the 3, wins the 500 20 years since Dale Earnhardt Sr. did. Nice job, Austin. Darrell Wallace Jr., second place finish there in the Richard Petty Motorsports car. Denny Hamlin, third. Joey Logano, 4th. Chris Buescher, 5th. Paul Menard, 6th. Ryan Blaney, 7th. Ryan Newman, 8th. Michael McDowell, 9th. And A.J. Allmendinger rounding out the top 10. The pole winner, Alex Bowman, finished 17th, 1 lap down, driving the 88, formerly driven by Dale Earnhardt Jr. The Xfinity Series was run on Saturday, Xfinity event, and Tyler Reddick was the winner there, followed by Elliott Sadler, Ryan Reed 3rd, Kaz Growler 4th, Garrett Smithley was 5th, Spencer Gallagher 6th, Ryan Truex, the brother of Martin Truex Jr., 7th, Daniel Suarez 8th, Ross Chastain 9th, Brandon Jones rounding out the top 10. And if you look at that image, that was the difference between winning and coming in second. Nice job by all drivers in that event. It was a typical Xfinity race on a super speedway. The Camping World Truck Series was Friday night. We have the winner, Johnny Sauter, followed by Justin Haley. Front row, Joe Nemechek 3rd, Ben Rhodes 4th, Scott Lagasse Jr. 5th, Grant Enfinger 6th, Spencer Davis 7th, Dalton Sargent 8th, Jordan Anderson 9th, and Justin Fontaine rounding out the top 10. Nice crowd on hand for the Daytona 500 on Sunday, although it looked a little weak for the Can-Am duels on Thursday and the Camping World Truck Series Friday and the Xfinity race on Sunday. But they did announce a sold-out crowd over the weekend, and it looked like a sold-out crowd on Sunday. And it's something that I don't want to say bothered me about the whole Daytona week. What bothered me is, and play along here, 36 teams are in the show automatic. Automatic. You're going to start 40. 40 show up. So everybody's in the show pretty much. My question or my statement here is, the Sunday before the Daytona 500 is front row qualifying. Front row qualifying. So you pick the front row. Okay, you got it. Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, they're the front row. Now, based on time trial and things of that nature, the lineup for the Can-Am duels for Thursday then becomes set with those times. So basically, if you come in 3rd in the time trials, or the 3rd fastest, then you become the 3rd person in line in your Can-Am duel. So now they race these dual races. They race these races. Drivers can elect to stand by their time for their spot, or if their finish in the duels is better, they get in. But aren't they they're all in anyway? With this new charter system, 36 charter teams are in the show regardless. Why do we have to have time trials a week before, and then like a heat race or 2 heat races on Thursday to determine the starting spots? That's one of those rules that were changed, that they didn't look at the residual effect of what they changed. If these 36 guys are in, okay, boom, you're in, automatic, then anybody else who's there is qualifying for the last 4 spots. So why have it? Why have the duels? The duels have lost some of their spark. Remember when 50 cars showed up for the Daytona 500? Nobody was a guaranteed in except 2 past champions, 2 past owner champions, and then with the first race, the first guy not that make the race from points last year. And like Jay Slater says, you're in the race. Why are you wrecking everybody? Just ride around. If you know you got a top 10 time trial speed, you know what? This is what I would do, at least the older me would do. I would just ride around. I'm in. I got a top 10 starting spot. Let's wreck the car, so I got to start last, which some drivers did. Why? I don't understand that. I've been to weekly racing series tracks where they're just running heat races to fill the time, because they advertise heat races are at 5, features are at 7. So they're going to start 20 late models, and they have 18. So they put 9 in each heat, and there they go. And guys are wrecking each other. It's a handicap system. No matter where you finish in your heat in some of these weekly tracks, no matter, you could win the heat race, but due to handicapping, you're going to start like 15th anyway. I never understood that. So I don't understand this stuff with let's have a whole day of qualifying to pick the front row, and let's, then set up a lineup for these 2 heat races, I'm going to call them, and to pick the rest of the field. But you're really not picking the rest of the field because you're not sending anybody home. Something that needs to be talked about. Maybe like in the 60s, the duels, they used to call them the twins, the twin 125s back in the 60s, maybe that should be a points race, and it would make it interesting. And there'd be people in his grandstands watching. There'd be people on TV watching from home. It's something that's got to be looked at, in my opinion. Not that my opinion really counts, but it's something that needs to be looked at. And this is what happens, and I know I say this a lot, when non-racers make the rules. You have a person who doesn't even walk around the garage area making themselves visible to the teams and the owners and even the fans in Brian France. Brian France needs to be visible. And like his father and his grandfather, they were visible. They were there. They talked to the teams. They listened to the teams. They might have grabbed a handful of owners. Hey guys, let's go in the hall, or let's sit down and talk about something. And it's like, wow, it's just not right. And maybe I'm a purist. Maybe I like things the way they used to be. I don't know, and I'm not too big on change, but you can't go backwards, and they're going backwards here. There's less teams, and I know that the teams are trying to organize, the owners are trying to organize so that they could, maybe save money knowing that they're going to be in the show. And I understand from a car owner's point of view, there's nothing worse than spending a boatload of money to go to a race and not making it. It's tough on your sponsors. You got people to answer to. You got to talk. Hey, you didn't make like 5 races, and we paid you X, Y, Z. And a lot of sponsorship proposals, not only at this level, but maybe every other level, is based on you making the show. And a little bit more if you top 5, a little bit more if you win. But you're guaranteed in the show. And now we have stage racing. So what are they doing? Instead of just racing the last 10 laps, you race the last 5 laps of each segment, so you get your TV time for your sponsors. They've taken away racing from the race car driver. The race car drivers, there's nothing wrong with bumping and grinding in a race at any level. There's nothing wrong with that. But these parades, I watched the Xfinity race, and there was that tandem racing again. In fact, Elliott Sadler got penalized because he was on the rear bumper too long. Now Sadler took his penalty, and he worked his way back up to almost winning the race. But I don't understand this. And Jay Slice is saying, use the black flag to stop some of this crashing, like crashing the leader to win. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are upset that Austin Dillon, may have or may not have sent the leader when he was running second, sent them into the infield or whatever. And I watched that, and I watched it a couple times and a couple more times. And now understand this, most of us never drove at 200 miles an hour. I'm pretty safe in saying, I'm looking at the people in the chat room, I don't see anybody there that won 200. Maybe 100, maybe 120, but not 200. Now, I'm going to give a little education on speed. At 60 miles an hour, you're going 100 feet a second. So at 200 miles an hour, you're going a football field, including the end zones, that distance in a second. So now, think about how your mind works. There's a guy in front of you, something happens with the air and whatnot, and you just nudge a guy, because his car squirreled or yours did something. You're running that close at 120 or 200 miles an hour, and you touch. Folks, I'm going to tell you, I've officiated over 6,000 events in my lifetime. 6,000 events. And if you want me to explain how, PM me, and I'll give you every one. And because a lot of people think, no way, you didn't do 6,000. I did. And when you look at that, not every spin out was on purpose. Not every wreck was on purpose. Austin Dillon was racing. And the car in front of him, yeah, they touched. He didn't right turn him. He didn't get in his right rear quarter and left turn him so he wasn't looping around. They touched. And these cars are so much on the edge, especially at 200 miles an hour, and especially with the aero program that they have and the dynamics that they've put into these cars, that you could spin a guy with air, and nobody was better at that than Dale Earnhardt Sr. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the passionate feeling that race car drivers have and why they have it when we come back.
Hi, I'm Remington.
I'm Emerson.
And I'm Sebastian.
We're Palais Royale, and you're watching Inravio TV.
There we go.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, this is Chris and Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hi, this is Mike Jarecki from My Race News, and you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Hey, welcome back. Passion. Why do we race? It's passion. Why do we play golf? Passion. Why do some people hunt? It's passion. Why do we do anything? Because we're passionate about it. And some of us are good at what we do. And you know, I watched the video, and unfortunately, I couldn't get permission to use it. And it was Darrell Bubba Wallace, his post race news conference on finishing second. And if you don't think racing is a passionate sport, and I mean a passionate sport, you need to watch that video, and you could find it in the social media. Now, he was a runner-up finish. He finished second. And he goes into the press room, where I've been in there dozens of times, and all these reporters are there and cameras and TV cameras and flash cameras, and the room is packed. And the senior members have seats. They're assigned seats. And the newer members of the media, they're against the wall in the back, and you're shooting over somebody's shoulder, over their head. And Darrell Wallace Jr., Bubba gets up there. And I, like I said, those who know me know that I know Bubba. I've known him since the K&N Pro Series days. And again, right away they're hitting him with statements like, he's the highest finishing African-American driver in the Daytona 500 history since Wendell Scott in like 1966. And he's the highest finishing, rookie in his first Daytona 500 as well. And Bubba Wallace got up there, and it was his turn, and the sweat's pouring off him, and he's trying to wipe the sweat off him, and he sits down, and the questions are coming at him, and he's kind of nervous. You could see he's nervous. Well, apparently his mom walked in. She walked into the press room, and she went up, and he got up, and he hugged her. And the tears started to fly. And those who don't know Bubba Wallace, and I'm not going to go into anything personal, but after struggling for 2 years, now understand, he came out of the NASCAR diversity program, did well in the K&N series, he did well in the truck series, he has wins at Martinsville, and he had a ride with Jack Roush and Roush Fenway Racing in the Xfinity series, and sponsorship money dried up. And I can remember, not this past December, but the December before, talking to him about 2017, what's going on? And he told me that day, he goes, we only have enough sponsorship to run XYZ races, and I don't know what's going to happen. I said, a guy like you, no problem, you'll get something. I said, you're with a good team, something will come, something will break. Well, if it doesn't, I'm done. So it didn't come. He was done. So here we are, we're 2017, and he's struggling. 2016 was a struggle. And he gets up there with his mom, and like I said, the tears are flowing, and he sat down, and he covered his face with the towel, and it wasn't just a little emotion. It was raw emotion. And he came back after that, and he kind of chuckled, and he says, you have no idea what my family and I went through for the past 2 years to get to this point. And you know what? I don't look at Bubba Wallace as an African-American race driver. I look at him as a race driver who connected with a team that a lot of people have washed away. Petty Motorsport, it's just a name now. They haven't run up front in years. It's no lie. But I had this feeling, and then I shared this with people, that Bubba Wallace and the Richard Petty team, they were going to fulfill something for each of them. See, a team, when it blends together like that, when there's a melding, Bubba brings talent to Richard Petty Motorsports. Richard Petty Motorsports brings a team that's hungry and that was lacking in talent the last few years. And no disrespect to some of the guys who've driven for Richard Petty Motorsports. None. I wish them all well in their endeavors, but they never were there at the end. Yeah, there was some glimmers of hope. There was, everyone's like, there'd be excitement. I've been a Richard Petty fan my whole life, since the mid-'60s. I had a black and white TV, and I'm watching, Richard Petty cleaning up every race he's in back in the mid-'60s, 65, 6, 7, when I first started watching racing. And, 27 wins in 1967, 10 in a row. It was like everybody else is running for second. Now, Bubba Wallace runs for Richard Petty. And I'm proud to say that his spotter is my cousin, Freddie Kraft, who, when Bubba came out of the K&N Pro Series, or he came out of the diversity program to go into the K&N Pro Series, Freddie's his spotter. Freddie's his spotter. And I can remember we would joke about it at the racetracks all over the place. And, you know, Freddie goes, here I am, a northern guy with a northern, you know, phrases, and I got to go with this southern guy who I don't understand. He can't understand him. It's going to be interesting. And yeah, you know, and they blend, they meld. And that's important. You know, the spotter and the driver. The driver's got to trust that spotter with his life. And I don't say that too lightly. The spotter has to, if that spotter says clear, boom, you go. If that spotter says he's on your quarter, you got to keep it down. Don't question him. You just got to listen. And I've always said that, you know, 300 feet a second, when your spotter says something, by the time he says it, and by the time you process it, you just want like a football field and a half. Think about that, you know? And it's funny, and I think 22 Figure 8 is saying, you know, when Earnhardt tragically lost his life way back when, it hurt his enthusiasm for the sport. And now he's saying that he could look forward to, you know, rooting for Bubba. It's like Bubba Wallace and Richard Petty Motorsports have breathed some fresh air into our sport and gave some of us who've kind of had a ho-hum thing sit back and be excited again about racing. I know I am. And, you know, unfortunately, I was there the day that Dale Earnhardt went to Heaven Motor Speedway, and so were my kids, and that had a profound effect on them. But you know, it's passion. You know, it's passionate, and it's what we do. And as I was sitting there watching the Bubba video and jotting down some notes, I look back and, you know, I've had a lot of passionate moments in race time, you know, in racing in all these years. And like Jay Slice is saying, we'll talk about spotting. Spotting is sometimes tougher than driving. I think it is. I agree. I spotted at Bristol for the first time. I was like nervous. I don't get nervous. Remember, I went to my cousin Freddie Kraft. I said, I'm standing next to you, dude. You got to hold me up, lead me in the right direction. But like I said, I went back and I tried to find, you know, the 10 moments that the passion that I had for racing came that I felt, and I'm going to go over. I'm going to go down this. I'm going to bore you with this list here. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to bore you with this list. We'll come back. We're going to take a break, and we come back. We're going to talk about some passionate moments that I've had in racing when we come back.
Hey guys, this is Jibs from Ocean's 8, Alaska, and you're watching Inravio TV Network.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Mark Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you're punching the But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
What's up, guys? This is Assuming You Survive, and you're watching Inravio TV Network.
Welcome back. Yeah, just looking at some of the things that are saying in the chat room, and yeah, 22 Figure 8, he was there listening to Dale all day, and yeah, it's you look back on some of those things. But anyway, passionate moments that I say when the passion that the blood runs through you and you get all warm and you get teary-eyed. Those moments in racing, we've all had them. We've all had them. Some of them good moments, some of them not so good. But I was sitting there and I was hard pressed to come up with like the number one thing that brought raw emotion to me. And it goes back to 2001. And it was seeing my daughters, Jessica and Erin, who were in the Eastern Kart Racing Association series, both winning championships. They got their trophies. 2001, Jessica was the junior kart champion, and Erin was the novice champion. The trophies were taller than them, and I had to open the moonroof in the car to bring them home. That's how big their trophies were. And I'll tell you what, when they called them up, and they called the name as champion, and then they did this champion parade at the restaurant, or the venue we had the awards dinner at. I got teary-eyed. I'm not ashamed to say that. Because it was all that hard work paid off. And the time that I spent with my kids, and I had 4 kids racing back then. My son Joe was in a champ kart. He was a senior champ kart. Jessica and Erin, as I just said, and Kerry, my road cone, was in a, we called her a road cone, but we had fun with it. I was so proud of them, and what we went through and what we sacrificed to do that. And that had to be one of the most pleasant emotional times of my lifetime. Another time was way back in 1986. My uncle TK received his 1986 championship hardware the day we buried my grandfather, TK's dad. It was a tough one. But we earned it. He earned it. Life goes on, so it was bittersweet, but that was an emotional time. Passion, we do this. Another one, carrying a driver. And I'm not going to say who it was. I lifted this guy off a pit road at the Thompson Motorsport Park, who was hysterical over Tom Baldwin Sr.'s, death that night at the race when they red flagged the race. And I'm walking back from the crash scene, and I see this driver just sitting on pit road, hysterical. And I put him on my shoulder, and I carried him to his hauler. And his dad called me on Monday and thanked me. The passion. I didn't think about it. I just picked him up and did it. Giving a sportsmanship award to a car owner at an awards banquet, because one day he said to me, I help everybody. Everybody. And I never got a thank you or an award for it. I never got recognized, so I made sure he got it. And I had to present it, and I got choked up doing it. It was the passion that we have. And seeing my worst racing friend, and I've probably said this story a dozen times, when I say my worst racing friend, we wanted to kill each other on a racetrack. I have that wreck in '96. The first guy that came to my house after I got out of the hospital was this guy, Kenny Hyde Sr. We developed a friendship after that. We hated each other. We wrecked each other week after week. We got thrown out. We were going to be banned from NASCAR for what we did. And we were suspended. That was my first week back after our suspension. And the first guy that came to my house, it was the passion. We care about it. And he even said to me, he stood in my doorway, he said, I know we don't see eye to eye in a racetrack, but when this happens, we have to be there for each other. It's a passion. He hated my guts, but he was there for me. Another one, oh man, Mike Andrews Jr. I knew him since go-karts. He runs a modified. He's at the Riverhead Raceway in Long Island. Wins his first feature event. Tough, beating and banging race. He hangs on, he wins. We're in victory the little victory spot. If you've never been to Riverhead Raceway, it's a little spot at the start finish line that you check a flag, paint out. He's sitting there, tears in his eyes. The announcer's there with the mic, everybody's there trying to get him, and he kept saying, "Where's my dad? Where's my dad?" And his father comes over to him, and they embraced, and they kissed. And to me, that was one of the most passionate things I saw in racing. A father and a son. Nothing better. By the time I saw my mentor crumble to the ground after being hit by a spindle that broke off of a race car after it hit the wall. My mentor. When I say crumble to the ground, I can't even describe it. And then subsequently, losing his life weeks later from those injuries, and me stepping in, had big shoes to fill. Right place, wrong time, wrong place, right time, however you want to look at it. I took over for him, and I did the best I could based on what he taught me. How about this one? And I'm sure some of you guys that raced and had race cars, selling your race car and watching it drive away. That's tough. And as it left the property where I had it stored, I was like, maybe I should go chase after him and get it back. And we had something. That my last race car that I sold, and Jay Slice's brother drove for me, got Rookie of the Year honors with it, and the car was a moneymaker. My daughter drove it. Terry Stiles drove it. People drove that car. I drove it, but watching it drive away, the feeling that I had, it was like, and some of you have experienced it, it's like when you get a divorce and you're moving out. Well, that person moves out, they take all that stuff. But this is what we do. Or watching a video, watching a tribute at a racetrack for a fallen friend as a memorial. Watching that and seeing that person and knowing you were there for some of the things that they're showing on the screen, the passion. And then just as this week, 20 years ago this week, being on hand when Dale Earnhardt Sr. won his first Daytona 500, and to be there to watch every crew line up on pit road and shake his hand, every crew member from every team, because that's what we do. We're there for each other. We're there for each other in such a way that it doesn't matter. We were just beating and banging him to beat him. We had to shake his hand. And Jay Slice, you hit the nail right on the head with watching your race car. It's like watching a good friend move away. That's what it's like, And at like 22 figure, he watched his race car go on another person's trail drive. He knew his career was over. He said, this is the passion. There are some days that we'll be at a racetrack and we're going to look back and say, worst day of my life. There's other times where you're going to take that memory with you to your grave and beyond. Bubba Wallace, nobody knows what he went through to get where he is today. And I saw something on social media, somebody made like a disparaging remark about it, and obviously this person's never raced, and if they did race, they've never won. They've never been involved with a winning team, and they've never had their blood, sweat, and tears on the floor of a race shop to get a car ready. When people look, when a guy crashes and he's all upset and he's screaming, ranting, and raving, he wants to punch somebody, everybody thinks that's so wrong. You know what? That guy probably took his rent money or his electric bill money and bought a set of tires, hoping he'll do good that night. Not that I condone that, but now he has a wrecked race car, and he still can't pay his rent or his electric bill or put food on the table for his family. And if you don't think there's those types of races out there, you're crazy. There's a lot of people out there. I can remember, I'm not going to use names, but A guy would show up at the racetrack with a brand new truck, a gorgeous trailer, one of the best looking race cars I ever had. I had to go to his house to get a part. I thought I had the wrong address. Because everything this man had was in his truck, trailer, and race car. It's the passion. When you want to do something, that's what you do. And people that haven't raced and haven't been involved in racing, they don't understand that passion. That when your car's wrecked and it's being double hooked, you want to sit there and cry, but you can't because everybody's looking at you. So, you wait till you get home to do that, or you wait till you go in the shop on Sunday morning and you start looking at it like, you're like, oh man, what? The passion. And I'll tell you what, I always had respect for Bubba Wallace. But that respect level went over the bar when I saw his emotion. That respect level went over the bar when I saw the interaction with him and his mother. Not everybody has that. My parents thought racing was a waste of time, money, and energy. They thought that was the stupidest thing. But you know what? I had two uncles that raced. And I can remember being a little kid and watching my Uncle John work on his beat up, banged up number 39 in my mother's backyard. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to be a race car driver. I was 3 years old. And when I had my opportunity to do that, after trying and trying and trying, I realized maybe you're not a race car driver. Maybe you should be like an official or a talk show host or something, because that's a little better. The passion. We all have a passion for something. Some people like to cook and they just love it. Some people like to help people because it makes them feel good. Some of them just like hanging out with their friends. Some people like to volunteer. It's a passion. It's what we do, and it's how we do it, and how we live our lives day in and day out. Anyway, I'm glad I got that off my chest. I'm glad we didn't need any Kleenexes today. Where are they now? My man TC, miss him. But anyway, we got to wrap up, I think. I'm getting the nods from the control room. So I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules tonight to listen and to watch and to put up with some of the nonsense sometimes. We sometimes go off on these tangents. But you know what? That's what we do. And that's why you guys tune in, and gals. And I want to thank you for that. I also wish you wherever your endeavors will bring you this week, please be safe. Please be careful. Give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. God bless you all, and we will see you next week. Good night, everybody.
Inravio.com. Inravio.